It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, January 15th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content. Doesn't think a shootout is good for anybody in this situation.
These 3-point games just suck.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to dig deeper into this new arena thing and talk about our hopes and dreams for that arena now that it's apparently going to get built. And we are also going to check back in on the Flyers quarter century team and what we got right, what we got wrong, and what your thoughts were out there. Some really interesting comments on that as well. But we have to start with the Flyers versus Blue Jackets in a shootout loss. And I think, obviously the biggest thing here, maybe not obviously, but to me, the biggest thing here is Ivan Fedotov in net. I think that it's very clear to me, at least, that we saw what he did the first go round of him getting some starts, right? Where he started off super flaily, right? But as the games progressed, he got more and more stable, still a little bit of scariness out of the crease, right? But for the most part, his positioning has improved game over game in this second stint, the same way it did the first time. And I think, if they had just let him stay in that first time, he would have continued to get better. And maybe now we'll see that because maybe he's got the backup spot now.
I agree, but we know there's these other things at play with Kolosov, and it's like there is no point in having Kolosov up anymore except for whatever is these other circumstances that we'll never know about.
Right. And that's what scares me a little bit because we know that John Tortorella is a what have you done for me lately guy. And the very last memory that he has of you is your entire playing.
Yeah, Morgan
right?
Frost knows about that. Yeah.
Right. And I think with these goaltenders, it's especially the case. I would say it's hit or miss on the skaters. Sometimes he's willing to overlook things with the skaters, depending on who you are. But I think, quote unquote failing, which is not a failure in my book, let's be clear, but quote unquote failing in the shootout is the thing that's potentially going to get burned into Tortorella's brain.
I mean, okay, but nobody scored for your team in the shootout. Like the goalie can't score. So like if he gives up one, you say, okay, great shot. But the other team could come back and beat him if they score.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you look at his performance through the entire game and it was real solid.
No,
I got to say.
That was good. He was good.
Yeah, he made some incredible saves. I thought, Zach Werenski is a machine. And I think, obviously it's disappointing to let two in against the same guy, but I really think the second one was much less his fault. And it was more like the Scott Lawton mistake that kind of led to it.
Right.
So I think there was more of a team effort in that goal against in the third period. And so I just really think that they need to stick with Fedotov at this point.
We've thought that really almost all along. So I agree with you. And yeah, Werenski is Werenski, and he played over 31 minutes, and so that's what happens. Something else. I'm not going to harp on who took the face off, who didn't, with like 4 seconds to go in the game, but they got off a killer shot that could have just won the game there. So if somebody feels like the Flyers got the short end of it, they didn't, because they couldn't even win the final face-off to stop a shot on net in regulation, which could have been a goal. Severson got off a nice shot and Fedotov made a nice save.
Yeah, and I think there was a little bit of the being tired at the end of this game,
Oh,
with
for
it
sure,
being the tail end of the second
but
game of
not
a
in a shootout. You
back-to-back.
can't blame that on the shootout.
No, no, 100%. But I felt like it kind of bled into the overtime a little bit, just because when you have that much open ice, you have to utilize your speed. And I don't think the Flyers were able to do that in the overtime.
Yeah, and Mitchkov almost blew it in the overtime badly. And I think it was against Werenski, right? And so it's like, that was smart by Dean Evison to put him out there. I think he was him where there was that turnover. And right, yeah, that was when he went to try and go 5-hole on Fedotov, right? And he made the save.
Right.
Mitchkov has to understand that overtime isn't just about offense. So that's something he's gonna have to learn.
Yeah, and I know they put him out there because he ostensibly would thrive in these situations, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
does. But that is the kind of mistake you can't make. But it's also the kind of mistake that lots of guys make in
Oh,
overtime.
sure. I mean, it does happen. Like, that's
Yeah.
the chaotic nature of overtime, no question about it. And, you know, uh, the one thing I'll say this about Travis Sanheim, like, look, plays a lot of minutes. He's really good at it. I mean, he and York, I don't know how long they were out there for that second game, the second goal that tied up, but they just got beat badly. And,
Yeah.
that's something where you kind of have to look out for that, for how long shifts are. They may not have played 31 minutes, but still, they played good minutes.
They did, and, Sanheim played just over 25 minutes and got banged up pretty
Yeah,
badly earlier in the game,
yeah.
and so, it is a key situation. Now, who else are you gonna put out there then? Probably nobody, right?
Right, but it's for the amount of time, like, right, that's
Yeah.
I don't know how long they were out there, but they seemed like they might have been tired, and that's why they got beat like
Mhm.
that. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, yeah, I just thought overall they could have managed the overtime a little bit better, with the ice time, with
Yeah,
the how they approach the rushes and all
yeah,
of that, because they would have like one guy that had legs and nobody else did. Like
right.
it felt like that every single rush. So I think they can stand to improve on that. I thought that especially early in the game, even though they got that 1-0 lead, the Flyers were not sharp enough on their passes, and sometimes they were too long. Like, Columbus was cutting off those passes,
They
like,
were.
pretty regularly, and so it kinda just cut down on the Flyers' ability to get rushes down, the ice in regulation. That was a bit of a problem
Yep.
there, and, I just Tarasov is a goalie that's beatable,
Oh,
and
absolutely, he's beatable. I mean, it's not like he's a tremendous goalie.
right, and so I just feel like they weren't able to take advantage because they weren't really having rushes that were well organized as often as they had been in the previous 2 games.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, and that's all a part of this. I mean, if you're a fan that believes the Flyers are in this playoff race, this is a must win. I know it's 44, 45 games into the season, but it's a must win because Columbus already has a game in hand on you. They're ahead of you. Now they're further ahead of you. And I don't know how many games they have left with Columbus. Can't be a lot.
It's
So
one
if you're
more,
chasing them, yeah.
one
So if
more.
you're chasing them, right? I mean, it's like, it matters.
It does, and, I think, on the flip side, love to see Bobby Brink finally get that
Yeah,
goal,
yeah, yeah,
right?
that was nice, and Tippett got one, which was good, and
Yeah,
so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if Tippett's play is improved enough, but he has 2 goals in whatever game, so it's a little better, there's a little bit of an uptick there. Uh, are they scoring enough? No, but did they hold back Columbus from scoring, who scores a lot? Yes. So it's a mixed bag, like, this team's been a mixed
yeah,
bag all year, and the record reflects that they're a mixed bag.
yeah, I was mildly, like, starting to get worried about Tyson Forster just because it feels like he's been missing the net a little
Yeah,
bit.
oh, he missed the net on a golden chance. He
Right,
shot it right
right.
over it, which is like I know it's for us watching at home, it seems hard to believe you could do it, but you could do it. We've seen players do it.
Yeah, and he just did it in the last game too. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, maybe like Bobby Brink scored, so now Tyson Forster is going to miss the net. Like, is that how it's going with this line,
Right.
where only
Right.
two of the three are allowed to score at any
Right.
given time? But uh, that being said, again, just still really happy for Bobby Brink to
Yeah.
finally get that
Yeah, he's
goal
been
there.
working hard, no question.
Absolutely. So, really good payoff there. The power play, obviously, it's been successful the last two games, not so much in this game,
You know what's
but
interesting? Before you talk about this game for it, I saw Bill
yeah,
Meltzer had a post. First 22 games, second 22 games, it's almost identical. There's been almost no change in the power
yeah,
play. So that's coaching, folks. Sorry, it is.
yeah. I agree, and I think that it. I don't know if it looked as good as it did in the last couple of games, but I don't think it was necessarily awful either overall. And there's only a couple opportunities there,
Right.
so I'm not going to overly judge it, but it is like the first game in three without a power play goal, and they
Yep.
lost the game, so it's
Right.
worth mentioning,
Yep.
at least in passing here. But yeah, very interesting times ahead for the Flyers, and I think that looking ahead to the Islanders, who are in just like I would say the pit of despair. I don't even know what else to
Yeah.
say about
Patrick
them.
was like pleading with the team to play better.
I
Like,
know, I
it's
know.
like,
They just got shut out by Ottawa, so we'll talk more about them on
and
tomorrow's
Ottawa's ahead of the
show.
Flyers too, for those, paying attention. So
Yep,
yeah, Ottawa, they don't have Omar. So
yep.
they're using not even their number one guy and still hanging in the race. So interesting
Yeah,
times.
well, that's an interesting segue to a small topic we're going to address about Sam Urson and Team Sweden coming up next, as well as the big arena talk. And we'll get to the quarter century team stuff later in the show. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, comedy, or theater. And one of my favorite things I went to recently was Wicked, and I've been looking forward to seeing it again for a very long time. Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for those tickets to Wicked. I haven't seen it in forever, and I saw the movie and want to know how it ended. So I got tickets to see it. I found an amazing deal. I could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive. It offers great seats at unbeatable prices, and the app's all in pricing shows the total cost upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. On tomorrow's show, we will talk about Flyers versus Islanders. We're going to get into a draft eligible prospect and lots more to talk about. But if we recall from the Florida game, we saw that the GM for Team Sweden and Four Nations was there. They kept showing him during the broadcast. He was scouting Sam Urson. And it'll be interesting to see with that Allmark injury, how they choose to fill that third slot.
It will be. I mean, off the top of my head, I know there's Hogberg and there's probably one or two other goalies they're looking at. And, Sam battled against Florida. He wasn't particularly sharp. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know which way they're going to go. He's definitely in the running now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that whoever it is, they're probably not gonna play, but I
Yeah,
think that
Markstrom's going to be the guy. So, unless he's hurt, I agree
right,
with you.
right. So this is more about the prestige of it
Yeah,
and
it'd be
getting
cool
to
to make the team. You
participate.
get a jersey, get to hang it up over the fireplace or something. That's nice.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, we'll see. It'll be nice if we add
Yeah.
another flyer to
Oh,
the
yeah.
list of Four Nations participants. Meanwhile, we have a new arena in the works in South Philly. We saw the announcement on Sunday about it, and it was a joint announcement between the Sixers and Comcast. And I think, we talked a little bit about it on the Monday show in our Nemesis of the Week segment because you were particularly salty about it, Russ,
Yeah.
with, completely understandable. Why?
Yeah,
Because
not from
of
a
this.
Flyers perspective, from the Flyers being
No,
able to, work cohesively with the Harris Blitzer group.
right, which is the problem. And, they are the problem.
Yeah,
Let's
I mean,
be.
there's no question. They've caused problems for 2 or 3 years. They've been the angry tenant.
So not only have they been a terrible tenant, but then they jerked around Philly City Council. They got them to bend over backwards to approve this plan for the Market East project that then they were like, "Oh, sorry, that was just a negotiating tactic to get Comcast to cave and give them a 50-50 deal on a new
Right.
arena." And so that is very disingenuous and it caused a lot of trauma in the Chinatown neighborhood and
It
with
did. You feel bad
businesses.
because if they were looking for, like, this economic boom, it's not happening now.
Or if they were looking for it not to be there, they've just had to
Right.
expend all this energy and resources fighting this for
Fighting it.
apparently no reason,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, that kinda
So
stinks.
it really stinks. So ultimately, the deal is that they're going to build this new building that's going to open in 2031, maybe sooner if they can build it faster. It is that 50-50 partnership, and then Comcast, who does not currently have a stake in the Sixers, is gonna buy into the Sixers, and the 2 organizations will jointly put a bid together for a WNBA team that will play in this new arena as well. I'm not gonna complain about a WNBA team, but I am kind of gonna complain about one that's run by Josh Harris and his organization because I don't think that's helpful for the WNBA at all, considering how he's managed the Sixers. But that is a whole other
That's a whole other
conversation
show,
for another day.
maybe for
So
Locked On WNBA.
yeah, yeah, and which there is Locked On Women's Basketball. Check it out; it's really good. Anyway, the naming rights that for the Wells Fargo Center expire in August. I'm guessing it'll just be the Comcast Center
Yeah,
until the new
I don't think
building
they're
is
gonna get
built.
a new naming rights for it.
Right.
I think the most interesting part of this is where are they gonna build this while the arena still stands, right? And so there's a couple schools of thought. There's one where if they go like far in the parking lot to the end, it could be almost near where the Spectrum was and
Hmm.
start building there. Maybe.
That's what I think.
I mean, I thought about the Navy Yard. There's always talk about developing that Navy Yard and just moving things further down that way. They could do that too.
Hmm.
Um, but it's probably
Yeah.
one of those 2 places. That's my guess.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. We had said, and I thought that it was maybe too soon to have a new arena, just because they just put $400 million
Yeah,
into the Wells Fargo Center, right? And all these renovations
but that's
that are
just like a
very
kitchen upgrade for your house to them, you know?
maybe, but it's
An
still a big
expensive kitchen.
investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big investment, and I think they did a really good job of it.
They did
That's
a
the
great
thing.
job. I mean, it's really nice. I mean, I was asked today on Sirius, do I think the Wells Fargo needs to be replaced? So my answer is no. I mean, it's in good shape, but
No.
I get it. From the perspective of this, it's going to be. So it doesn't really matter what I think.
Right. I mean, but Wells Fargo Center actually just won best venue from Front Office Sports in 2024. So, like, there's really honestly nothing wrong with the Wells Fargo Center. And people say, oh, it's time and like compare it to
I
other
know. It's like, what's
buildings.
wrong with it? Please
But like,
tell me.
yeah, it doesn't matter what year it is and how
No.
old the building is. It's what shape it's in. Is it
Right.
nice? Is it functional?
MSG is a
You
lot
know,
older, but they got an upgrade too. Like,
mhm.
same thing.
They did, and other arenas have gotten
Yes.
upgrades and they haven't built new buildings, right?
No.
So I don't think like saying, oh, because it's 36 years old, it's time for a new building.
No.
I don't think that's the right approach. Okay, so if we get a new building, what do we want that we don't already have with the Wells Fargo Center? Are there maybe some like team facilities that could get improved. They just redid them. So what could they want that they didn't ask for this time around, right? Could they have addition now, if they're thinking about having a WNBA team, then they need another home locker room added, right? Another
Yeah, another
nice.
another locker room is gonna be
Mhm.
necessary. I mean, I've got a thing that's something that I think they could improve upon from a food and beverage perspective, because that's my background. Um, Maybe have the venting be on the other side of the arena, because every time we walk into, like, the media area, or anytime anybody wants to walk into the suite area, you get this greasy smell of burgers every game, and it's not the best smell. It's the byproduct smell of a hamburger. And so there is a way to not have that piping
Mhm.
out there. And so that's one little thing I think they could do as an upgrade. Of course, the team store will get bigger, and they'll add another restaurant or two, and they'll do all that.
Right. I just like, again, the needs between what we have and what could be are pretty small in the grand scheme of things. I think
Right.
it'd just be newer. Now maybe they can, build more technology into it and make it easier. They can make security better.
I mean, if
There
they
are
want to put a
things.
bouncy house in there, great, go ahead. I mean,
Yeah. They could try and go for the biggest jumbotron,
right.
you know, and there's all of those sorts of things and make the displays better, make the sound better, by changing the shape of the building to make the acoustics better. They can make it, work well both for sports and concerts. I think figuring out that sound balance is something that maybe they can improve on. But
I'll
I
give
just,
them one free idea that I think would be
yeah,
good, that I'm stealing from the Baseball Hall of Fame. You could have, like, a nice little theater area that if fans get to the game a couple hours early, there's just old footage of the Flyers running in there, just
we could have
old
a
stuff.
Philadelphia sports museum there. That's for
They
sure.
well, they're supposed to. That's a whole different thing. I was at an event where that's moving, and it's going into Xfinity Live, the Philadelphia
Hmm.
Sports Museum. So that's probably not going to move again. But you never know. It could move into this arena. So that's not impossible. But this would just be like a thing where they have maybe like 30, 40 theater seats, and you could just sit down, and there's just rolling Flyers footage all the time, whether it's documentaries from different seasons or different Flyers specials, things from Prism, whatever, just always playing. And you could do that a couple hours before every game. And I guarantee you people would sit in there and watch.
Yeah, I think that's true. But if y'all out there have any thoughts for what you want out of a new arena for the Flyers and Sixers and maybe other teams and all the concerts that you'd want to go to, let us know. We'll be happy to discuss them on future mailbag segments. But for this mailbag segment, we're just going to look at your Flyers quarter century team comments and look at how we did versus the actual one that got announced. We're going to do that coming up next.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. You could find amazing candidates fast, easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need to stop struggling and get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored job posts put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day the right person's day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsor jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need.
Okay, Russ. So the Flyers quarter century team, we picked who we would want on this list, not who we thought would be on the list.
Correct.
Just want to make that
And
clear
we weren't
before we.
part of the panel or anything like that.
Nope, nope. So if you look at our list versus the official list, we posted it on our Instagram account at Locked On Flyers. All three of them are there in some format, so you can check it out yourself. But and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. I think, you know, at least for me, I made the false assumption that they would go by the letter of the law and
By the
not the
rules,
spirit.
because you're a
And
rules
yes,
follower. Yes.
No, I think it's because I thought they would want to have Eric Lindros on this list, and so they would go by the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law. And so I went with Eric Lindros and John LeClaire on my first team, as well as Mark Recchi on my second team. They did not. They were like, "Oh, no, those are '90s people, so we're gonna, just look at, the real, like, 21st
Right.
century
Right.
focus list," which is fair. That being said, I got all 4 defensemen correct, so I will pat myself on the back
As you
for that.
should. As you should.
Um, yeah, so on the official list, they had Simone Gagne, Claude Giroux, and Mike Richards on their first team, and you had Mike Richards on your second team.
I
He
did.
was an honorable mention for me, and I had Simone Gagne and Claude Giroux on my second team because I kept Claude Giroux at center, whereas you
Right.
floated him out to
I put
wing,
him on wing so he could be on the
and they
first
were
team.
just on in alphabetical order on their list. They didn't even care
Right, they didn't
about
even, yeah, it didn't
position
matter. No.
when all is said and done. The other, I think, interesting aspect of it was the goaltending
Yeah.
because we both had Brian Boucher and Steve Mason.
Yep.
We did it in switched orders in terms of first team and
Yes.
second team, but those were our two goaltenders, like definitively. And I
Right.
could have gone either way, but I ultimately picked Brian Boucher for first team. The NHL said no, Brian Boucher's the second team goalie, and their first team goalie was Roman Chechmanek. And I I don't disagree in a lot of ways, but also I just felt like Brian Boucher was more impactful overall as a Flyers goaltender. And so I felt like I had to put him first team. And then Steve Mason just got them through some real bleak times. And I felt like that deserved something. Whereas Chechmanek, I just feel like I don't know that he accomplished as much.
No, I mean, he what was he, 3 years? Uh, he was like the first guy ever to wear brown shoes with a blue suit, which always threw me and still throws me, but it wasn't a thing then, and he did it. So I give him
Hmm.
credit for that, and we know that he's no longer with us. But, um,
Right.
the big thing for me is he had a better team. Much better
Yep.
teams than Steve Mason, and Mason had more wins. And Mason still had a 918 save percentage, and Mason still got jerked around on a lot of starts with Craig Berube, probably could have had more wins because there was the
Yeah.
whole thing with Ray Emery, who's also no longer with us, and so that cut into his starts. So Steve Mason was really impactful, and he got nothing out of this.
Yep. Absolutely. I just think he got hosed, and he put everything into his
He did,
time on the
and he's
Flyers
really
and
a
just
fine goalie. If you look
yeah.
back at him, he really was good.
Yeah, and it's like, again, not to,
Not that
like,
Checkmonic wasn't good. He had a little better save
right.
percentage, but he was weird. Checkmonic would have these games because I was covering the team then, and he could look like a superstar one game and not great the next, like right after each other.
I mean,
And
to be fair, Mason let in
he
a
had a little of
softball
that.
here.
Sure, he
Yeah.
had a little of that. But I felt like Checkmonic had more of that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree with that. I was a little surprised, like, not only that he was there, but that he was the first team
Yeah,
goaltender as
that
opposed
was
to
weird for me.
I don't know, maybe they just felt like they couldn't give it to Boucher because he's the broadcaster and it
Okay.
would feel like weird nepotism or something, but I
I
don't
would just
know.
like to know if Steve Mason came up in the conversation at all. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, well, interestingly, along the lines of the goaltending conversation, Matthew Moyer commented, "No love for Robert Esch. He should be on the list just for that Eagle Fusion setup he used." Which fair, best setup
Hey,
ever.
listen, I
It's
loved
like,
his post games. They were always weird. I was shocked to hear one time, like, and he still is, I think, a GM. I was like, really? Robert Esch is a GM? That's interesting. But yeah, okay. Good stuff.
yeah, and then Luke McDowell had a couple comments. Said that he didn't include Lindros because he viewed him as the '90s guy, which again, fair. We just at least I didn't go with that assumption because
No,
I
I
just
didn't
thought,
either. I was given an homage to
yeah,
him and felt like he was still impactful in those playoffs until he was hurt. It was a big deal how much when he came back, like, hey, they got a real chance to win here. And then when he got hurt, it was like, oh, it's over.
right. And so again, I still think you can go either way, but Luke's top forwards were Leclerc, Richards, and Giroux. and then Gagne, Roenick, and Voracek. So Roenick
Okay.
is the name that we didn't bring up and wasn't on the official list, but I think is an interesting
Really good
option.
flyer. He, in '04, he was tremendous. So yeah, I mean, the Roenick was good.
Yeah, and also want to give a shout out to Kim Johnson, who was, I think, a solid defenseman
Very solid.
there.
Last
Very
pick of the
solid.
draft.
Yeah,
So, pretty cool.
yeah. Legion of Doom commented that even though the NHL didn't list criteria other than those dates that we mentioned, that the trend had been that they weren't slotted by position and they were considering what they did for the team and not that time period. So he did not use that assumption that we did. And their first team was Giroux, Gagne, and Voracek, and second team was Konechny, who we talked about as like an
We did.
honorable mention, Mike Richards and Wayne Simmons, who we also talked about
Yeah.
as an honorable mention. And yeah, it kind of hurt not putting Simmons on there on my
Yeah.
list anyway,
All
because I
good
love that
choices.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Simmons was
mean,
heart and soul, man.
yeah, and considering how like tough the past 25 years have been for Flyers fans, the fact that there were more than just the six that we would want to include, I
Yeah,
think,
I
is a
mean,
good
that's a good
thing.
sign. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we had a couple other comments as well, mostly about the Lindros thing, and you can't really include him. But all in all, I think, our listeners had some really good thoughts,
They did.
and we did our best to say who we wanted. Again, not trying to predict, but I like our list. I like the official list,
Yeah.
and we all win in the end with all of
Yeah,
this
it's
because
a fun exercise, and it's good for the
yeah,
players who are on it, so that's nice.
yeah, we get to celebrate our players past, and hopefully we get some more involvement from Wayne Simmons. We saw him out on the ice
Yep,
recently, along with Chemo Timonen, and that was really good to see. Paul Holmgren was there too.
yep.
We can let that slide, but um,
Ah, Paul, he's alright. Paul's a good guy.
he he is a good guy. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow to talk Flyers versus Islanders and so much more. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIA.
I'm Russ, I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day.